Hey everyone, welcome back to Like a Boss. And we're pretty excited about today's guest. Dr. Rachel Schreiber, not only has she been named Executive Dean at Parson School of Design in a time of, well, let's put it this way, extreme change and challenge, with COVID-19 being one of the first things that she had to manage with her tenure, but she's also a juried artist who has exhibited around the world. If that's not already enough, she's a gender historian and she has been carefully tracking progress and evolution, especially as it relates to women's rights and education, for a long time. So let's give a big welcome to Dr. Schreiber. Hey there.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for having me and thanks for that intro.
Well, we're always excited to bring in folks like yourself. And I think another important thing to let our audience know is that, if it's not enough already that you're a dean and that you're an artist and a gender historian with multiple degrees, but you really got access to tech at a very early stage in your education when Macs were first coming out and you were told to design on them. Maybe just give us a few moments about that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's true. I tell this story that when I was a sophomore at the Rhode Island School of Design studying graphic design, Apple gave us 10 brand new Macintosh computers and said, play with them, figure out what to do with them. So I kind of came into the field as the technology was evolving and part of it.
And how long ago was that, just for our listeners that may not know? How
Oh,
long have you been in education?
that was a while ago. Well, that was when I was an undergraduate, so that was longer ago. But I've been in the field of higher education for 24 years, initially as faculty and then adding administrative responsibilities over the years until shifting full-time into administration.
And now with respect into that last shift that where you've gone into administration, can you tell us a little bit about your vision for your deanship and how you're working to change things at Parsons?
Sure, yeah. Well, I guess what I would say is that there came a point in teaching when I felt like I was able to bring strategic vision to things like program development and have a larger view on curriculum planning and things like that. And that got me interested in moving into administrative roles. And so I feel I'm incredibly honored to be leading Parsons School of Design. It's an amazing institution with great faculty and great students. A large part of what I pitched my candidacy for the role on was the need to make the education available to more people. That's been a center of our ambition, is to diversify our students and be able to reach more people, even potentially beyond New York City with our great education.
Oh, and cheers to that. It is all about equality. And I know you've long been an advocate of that just throughout, the readings and publications that you've done over the years, some of which I've even actually had an opportunity to read. So
It's great.
fantastic to hear. Now, when you go to school, at Parsons, with respect to your role as an administrator, you've got such breadth because you're also an artist, you're also a gender historian. So when I ask the question, whose lives are you changing? That's
Mhm.
kind of a big question. There's so many.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that today's education is very interdisciplinary, and that what is helpful to me in being an administrator and overseeing these programs is that I do understand what's similar and what's different between, say, being an artist and making work for a solo exhibition and working with a curator, or being a designer and working with a client, or being a historian and working with a peer review publication setting. So on the kind of nuts and bolts side, I have the range of perspective on that. But on the other hand, I also feel that one of the real hallmarks of Parsons and our curriculum is the fact that we're also part of the new school. And that enables us to do things like offer a degree in design and journalism. It enables our design students to study anthropology and economics and urban studies. So I think that practice has become more interdisciplinary as time has gone on, and I feel right at home in that kind of setting.
And just the fact that the adjective new, has been associated with school, I think it gives you tremendous liberty to do things differently and to be an innovator.
Yes, that's true. What does it mean to be called the new school for 100 years now? I think for us, we see it as a real imperative to always be forward thinking.
Rachel, what makes you a good leader?
That's a good question. Since we are, since we you mentioned COVID and thinking through like what it means to be a leader in crisis, I'm especially going to say that one of the important attributes, I think, is the ability to stay calm. Or, and also associated with that, to really be patient and calm and not freak out, and radiate that calm to the people I'm leading.
Or at least not show it on the outside, right? Never let
That's
them see you
right. That's
sweat,
right.
right?
Absolutely. There's time for that privately.
There you go. Now, you've had an opportunity to be in front of numerous classes and see education shift for, I won't put the number there, but it's significant. And you've seen changes in how students are learning through school and what their needs are and how they've evolved. Can you comment at all on which soft skill or soft skills you think that are most important for students to have today?
Well, I think a lot of people would answer that question by saying talking about the importance of listening. But I might even phrase that a little differently, and I would go a little further and say that a really good soft skill is learning to talk less. So it's a little different than listening, because talking less, the practice of talking less, enables one to be present in a different way to the other people who you're working with.
Now, aside from the enormous task and challenge of being in the world's hottest hotspot with respect to COVID, trying to manage a school in the center of Manhattan where it had to literally shift overnight to online, what's the hardest thing you've ever had to do?
Uh, you know, I have to be, if I'm really being truthful with that answer, I have to say that the hardest things I have to do in my job are not things I can discuss here. And what I mean by that, quite seriously, is that I do deal with a lot of confidential matters regarding people working together. That ends up being HR matters. And so one of the really important aspects about those parts of my job is being really confidential so that I maintain people's trust. So I guess I want to answer that by saying I can't really discuss particulars, but I would say that part of my job is one that's hard, that takes patience and nuance, and it's complex. It's necessary part of my job, but it's not the part I look forward to the most. I will say that.
And just with respect to just my own personal policies, my Like a Boss podcast, my journalism, and everything that I do, I never ask people to divulge confidential
Right.
information
No,
or
of
strategic
course.
plans or any of that. That is just so not my style. But I
Hmm.
appreciate, the difficulties that you have, and you've really got a fine line to walk. That's can be extremely challenging and emotionally also very taxing.
Yes, that's true. I think that's maybe one of the other aspects of leadership is learning not to take things personally, and being able to let things, keep things in perspective, and to be able to find some downtime where you're not just totally rehashing and mulling over the challenges you've faced during the day.
Why do you do what you do?
One can observe a student learning, and when you watch the learning that takes place with students, it's magical. Education is deeply transformative, and I initially experienced that as a teacher, and then as an administrator, I feel like what I get to do is empower that to happen between other faculty and students. And it's kind of a calling and a blessing to be part of that, because it's so critical to our ability as a society to move forward.
Now, Rachel, a large chunk of our audience are women in tech, and so they're going to be very curious about how you answer this question regarding how you leverage technology within your
Mm.
education and administration.
Yeah, well, certainly technology has transformed the fields of art and design, and has become essential to all of those fields. So that's endemic through and pervasive to all of our teaching. But as far as administration, I guess what I would say is that I'm a major user of all kinds of tools for sharing, right? Whether it's cloud-based documents, or I'm a fan of note-taking apps, because sometimes I'm out and about and I need to pull up a detail on my phone of something I've been working on at my desk. So it's that ability to share data with others and across my devices, that whatever it is that enables you to be able to access what you need from wherever you happen to be, I find to be really effective in today's work environment.
Is running the new school, Parsons Design, the experience you expected it would be?
Well,
Aside from the
I'm
COVID little wrinkle, you know.
just aside from a global pandemic. Yes, to a large extent, but I guess I'll say, and I really do mean this so sincerely. I am so deeply impressed with our faculty, and I guess I'll extend that to the COVID moment and say both our faculty and staff have gone above and beyond, and it just makes this is maybe it's hard to talk about. It's hard still to talk about any silver linings in regards to this pandemic, but I've just been so I'm so appreciative of the people I work with and the devotion and dedication they bring, and their high levels of thoughtfulness, quality of education, and professionalism. So I would say that's exceeded my expectations.
On the bad days, because we all have them, you're an artist. Your artwork has been juried and presented and exhibited around various cities around the globe. You're a recognized expert in gender history with numerous publications. You've been a professor. Now you're a dean leading one of the world's best art schools and design schools. So have you achieved everything you've set out to do? And if not, like, what's next?
I think that all of those experiences come together to this moment, and I think that we're at a crossroads with higher education, and it's a time when we are asking really tough questions about how to make the education affordable, sustainable, available, and I don't think I will feel like I've achieved everything I've set out to do until I really feel like I've made more progress on that front. We really do know that we need to be able to reach a broader audience, as I said at the outset.
What do you wish people did more of and less of?
We talk a lot about creating a culture of calling in instead of a culture of calling out. So I guess I'll say that I wish people did less calling out and more calling in, and I'll say what I mean by that, which is that rather than pointing fingers and saying this person or that person is wrong or terrible or did something bad, how can we bring people along and help them understand how to create a more just and equitable world? If we see that work as a process of bringing people into community together, into a shared vision, that really transforms the nature of the work rather than simply always casting blame.
Now, say I designed a past blaster wand and said, Rachel, I'm going to give it to you and you get to change anything from your past. What would be different?
Not a whole lot. I mean, I guess if this is kind of like that question of like, what would you tell your younger self? I think the biggest thing I would say is to not worry about the future too much. I actually had a teacher, a faculty, a professor in undergrad who I was graduating, and I asked him, like, how will I know if I'm doing the right thing, if I'm taking the right job or making the right move that's the next step in my career? And what he said to me was, it doesn't matter that much as long as you always are putting your whole self into what you do and finding a way to love what you do. And if you don't love it, then make a change. Then that will always work for you. And that's been a guiding principle, and I think it has served me well. So I was appreciative for that advice.
Is there a book that you'd like to recommend?
I
Yeah,
think
pick one.
I know, right? I think in the context of your podcast, I'm going to say that the book I'd recommend is How Women Rise. And the part after the colon reads, break the 12 habits holding you back from your next raise, promotion, or job. And that book has been really powerful for me. And I often give it to women who I've promoted.
What do you want people to know about you or about the new school?
Oh, me or the new school. The new school is really an incredible university, and Parsons' relationship to the new school is so exceptional. Most art and design departments at universities have to struggle for their right to exist. for their existential, to prove their worth or their necessity. And the new school is a university where design is intrinsic to the way we think and the way we do things. And more so, the new school is a university with a real devotion to social justice. And so when we put those two things together, which is bringing design thinking towards addressing really big problems like climate change or racial inequities and trying to achieve racial justice, I am completely convinced that that's just an incredibly powerful combination. And I'm so, as I said, honored to be part of that every day.
I'd like to ask you to share your best tip for the next generation of women, and think about it in the context as you always do, which is in the broad sense, to be inclusive of both cis and trans women.
Yeah. What comes to mind for me is that in my most recent job search, in fact, the job search in which I ended up with this appointment at Parsons, I sat down and wrote out my goals for the next position. What do I care about the most? And what am I hoping to get, to achieve? What kind of work environment do I want? And one that emerged really high on my list was that I realized I had a desire to work for someone from whom I felt I could learn. So my best tip for women would be find your mentors. Try to work for someone who you can see as a mentor, and then observe them.
Rachel, how can our audience help you?
I think that our entire society could do a better job of valuing education.
Last question here. Not quite as heavy as what we've been discussing, a little lighter. If your shoe style was your personality, are you a boots, stilettos, sneakers, flats, or flip-flops kind of gal?
This is a bit like the book question, right? Do I really have to pick one? I think what I want to say is that I equally love fashion and love being dressed up, but I also love my, weekend comfortable, comfy clothes. So can I pick two? If I may, I'd like to pick two and say that I would have both a very cool, well-designed pair of flats, because I actually always need to be comfortable, and my sneakers.
Absolutely. Everybody has a different answer to this. And you wouldn't think, I mean, we're almost 40 podcasts in, and no two answers have been the same. A lot of
That's
loyalty
great.
there.
I
That's
like
the joy
that.
of it.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Schreiber, I wanted to thank you again for taking the time away from all of the work that you're doing over at the new school, and to say thanks so much for sharing your insights today with our Like a Boss listeners.
Thank you so much, Loralyn. It's been great to be here.
And how about that fantastic intro by Touch Circle?